Are you an entrepreneur or ready to become a boss? Welcome to Hawaii Boss, the business podcast made in Hawaii, where you will hear from island movers and shakers on who they are and their impact on our state. And now, step into the office of your host for Hawaii Boss, David Pettijohn.
Aloha, Hawaii Boss podcast listeners. You listen in all the time, you watch in all the time. We're excited to have, again, a second-time visitor. It's often a blessing for us to be able to see the progress. You know, in the middle of the pandemic, we were interviewing folks, and David Sun-Miyashiro is here with us today, and we'll get to talk to him. David, aloha and welcome.
It is great to be back since March of 2022. It's been a little while.
Yeah, listen, I'm sure we love the idea that the pandemic is sort of rounding up, but there's, I guess, regular life to get back to. And so that's the challenge. Everybody's trying to fit. Well, there's some lingering, in healthcare. They still have some burdens of COVID and things like that. Education, I'm sure there's still some lingering. There was even some talk about maybe, if there was another round of some COVID, that there may be some closed or some schools evaluated. And so anyway, glad that's really behind us, most of it. There's some speculation, but for the most part, that's good. Now, tell us, as you're coming out of the pandemic, I know you were trying to do a direct response to the pandemic at the time, but as the founding executive director of Hawaiikidscan, tell me how things are going for you now.
Yeah, I was listening to our old episode just to kind of refresh myself on where I was in my life back in March. And, a lot of what we talked about were the programs we had been doing at the time, things like Wi-Fi on wheels, trying to bring internet access to kids. And, a lot of that's actually still going on because unfortunately, internet is still expensive. And especially these days, with inflation and other challenges, it's not a guarantee that kids have home internet, right? And regardless of the pandemic,
right.
Able to have.
Now, I know you got more stuff to tell about what you're doing, but let's slow that down a minute. Let's talk about, that access, because it does seem so important to the current, state of education. You have to have digital access in order to access the courses and the online work. And really, the kids are sort of expected to be, in a sense, very conversant in a computer, or else they're being left behind for others that are quickly. So, I mean, tell us about, what are some of the reactions when they say all of a sudden they get free Wi-Fi, or they have this program? Tell us about how that impacts kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of our goals as we kind of shift out of this pandemic, which is, I think COVID really highlighted the deep digital divide that's in our communities, and the fact that for some people, it wasn't that big of a change to be able to work from home or learn from home and order things on Amazon and, be able to live your life. And then for others, it was a massive change and a massive disruption, right? And so I think what we're really working hard to do now, in collaboration with groups like the Hawaii Broadband Hui, is to make sure that we don't just shift to normal and forget about all the challenges that we saw exposed, right?
And well, can I just add too? I know I keep interrupting you, but we still don't know the full depth and breadth of the educational sort of impact of what the closed schools and the masking and all this stuff. We still don't know. I guess we're starting to get the preliminary results, but.
Well, and like everything else, it was such a chaotic time, and I think big decisions were being made quickly. And so for us, I do think we hit a pivot point in terms of how we work, how we learn, the kinds of ways we connect and support each other. And for better or worse, I think there is going to be more of an integration of technology, digital, livelihoods and working and all that moving forward. And so I think what we're really trying to highlight is now is a window of opportunity for our communities, our governments, our employers to invest in making sure all of our community members are able to live a digital life. So that's my hope, is to close that digital divide by 2030.
Now that's a pretty big goal, but it sounds like there's steps to any strategy. If you want to get to the moon, I guess they had to say that we want to get to the moon, or you want to get to Mars. Now you got to say it, like, okay, I want to get to Mars. So you have these lofty goals. What are some of the, you say investing? Tell us about how folks can get involved in that way in Hawaiikidscan. You're a not-for-profit.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, there's some of it is, it's much bigger than us. It's federal programs like the Affordable Connectivity Program, where families can actually go sign up and get, some subsidies to support internet access at home, things like that. There's an emergency broadband benefit for a while too. So the programs are out there. I think
Right.
making sure that folks know about them, sign up, that's a lot harder. And so I'm really glad that we've had volunteers through groups like the Broadband Hui who are going out to community centers and events and actually helping to sign people up.
Right.
Because again,
Because it's a
you can
benefit
offer
out
great
there. It's already
programs,
out
but
there.
people got to know. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
The money's there. And, so for us as Hawaii Kids Can, rather than trying to raise more money for those purposes, we're trying to help get the word out about those programs. And, for our existing portfolio of sites, we have 6 that we still operate and run that are offering free internet. Those are going to continue into 2023. And then I think we're trying to figure out, is that something we're able to hand off to the community college system or county government or another organization, and then they can kind of keep it continuing from there.
Sure. And that seems like, the community colleges and the different, state resources, have to be engaged, in some way as a continuation, because again, I think community college is really the extension of, Department of Education, K through 12. Many times, even some places you hear that, community colleges should be free. So again, people can access that education and different pathways, but this digital divide that you're trying to bridge, how else do you get the message out to folks? Do you go into schools?
We have been approached by a few schools, so I think we're going to
Mhm.
go talk to some coming up in the new year. But a lot of it is working with, when you think about the digital divide, the reason it's so powerful and so nasty is that it affects every single aspect of life, right? So
Mhm.
something like telehealth, we're really really grateful to work with telehealth organizations. There was a digital inclusion week back in October, and so trying to help support them to get the word out on the value of telehealth, right? It's
Right.
kind of this irony where in some ways you would think, COVID shutting down hospitals or, kind of filling up all of the kind of healthcare slots would make it harder for folks to get preventative. I think what the practitioners are saying, it was actually great for preventative support, because rather than having to clear your whole day and try to figure out how to get down to your doctor, hop on Zoom, talk through
Transportation
how
and
I'm feeling, right? And a lot of
yeah.
that you can just knock out of the park right there, and it's not a big deal. And so I think that's something where talking to folks like telehealth and even kind of the workforce side, talk about the value of remote work as an option. I think that's really where you can kind of see that multiplier effect, because it's not just education, right? It's not just
Right.
healthcare, it's everybody. I think
Right.
that's the way to do it.
Yeah. So because every part of our lives really can be accessed through that digital connection, the telehealth primarily, of course, they'd want to be able to reach more folks. So they have to have that increased connectivity. What are we looking at? I mean, what's the sort of the stark stats of how many people we're looking and we still need to get internet to, or to bridge this digital divide in Hawaii?
Yeah, there've been some good efforts over the last year or so to start to do some of that mapping. I believe the FCC has some mapping. There are also organizations like the Aomo Collective that have done some mapping. So I can't recall off the top of my head the exact statistics, but I can definitely let you know if you want to drop some of those links into the show notes. Folks
Sure.
could look it up and
Oh, absolutely.
see what the status is in that neighborhood.
Yeah, that's good. And also, of course, we have, I don't know if you can see it. It's not picking it up on my screen, but it's my cell phone. You can see a little
Oh,
bit.
there it
Okay.
is. Yeah, there it
Yeah,
is.
my cell phone. So, that's a way. I mean, it seems like every kid's got one of these, but there's still some that don't. But that seems to be a way that many times they get access to it. But as an educational device, it's questionable, maybe.
It's just like anything else, right? A computer can be uh, far less than an educational device, depending on how it's being used, or it could be incredible, right? And
Hmm.
contain, more knowledge than all of the libraries in the world put together. So I think some of it is actually, how do we help our kids find the right apps and technologies so
Right.
that they can use their phones for good? I'll have to shout out folks like Steve Su and his Ideate Studios, which are based out of the Entrepreneur Sandbox here in Kaka'ako.
Okay.
But they have a whole program aimed at kids who are interested in seriously learning the skills for what it takes to be, social media influencers and streamers and all these kinds of new careers, and taking it seriously, not just kind of a goofy thing where, I mess around and have fun, but hey, I can monetize this thing and potentially take home, some nice cash. So I think taking it seriously at a professional level really makes a difference there.
Well, let me just give them a testimony of how true that is. Listen, this podcast came out of, a recorded Zoom call. Okay. And not like, I'm not Joe Rogan. Okay. No one's ever, going to compare me to that. But listen, there is this opportunity. It takes away the middleman. You've got all the KHON and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Knowing that, that's great that they're teaching that. Like, you have access to this digital power that you can use to amplify whatever your business, your thoughts, whatever it is. You don't have to, it always helps. I can amplify it quicker if you're able to have money and give it to these other outlets, but really you have this access, and some of these folks from the ground up, Instagram, whatever it is, built in entire businesses. I know a young lady who graduated in marketing from college, and has a $200,000 a year business on selling things online. And there's a lot of folks in Hawaii that do that as well, so Hawaii-based products, and there's lots of dollars out there too. So I guess I just share that with the folks that you're trying to talk to, that there really is an advantage. You don't have to go and ask someone else for it. You can go get it yourself with a little bit of YouTube videos watching and a little bit of desire to work a little bit. So,
it's so interesting, and a lot of these programs and apps make it easier than ever to replicate a lot of those high-level professional skills. I think about some of the partners and students we work with who use programs like Canva, and the things that can come out of Canva for just sitting around 20 to 30 minutes and playing with templates. I mean, before you'd have to be a pretty high-level graphic designer, to reach those, to create that kind of content, or a videographer, right? When you think about Instagram, and so not saying that the traditional techniques don't matter, or there's no value in going and getting some of those certifications, but I think if you take it seriously, as those are learned skills, just like everything else, just like reading and math, right? I think that does matter for kids.
Yeah, sometimes they have certifications, but other times just is how fast they can whip around on my phone faster than I can. There's so many things they can do. Funny is, my daughter Lucy, she's 17, and they say for fun they'll make these little slide decks just about nothing, just little, then they'll share them with each other, and it's just interesting how their learning will continue to grow and be different, but definitely digital is sort of the core. It seems like all of that it's got everybody's attention, so we have to use that as the tool, it sounds like.
Exactly. And that's always my message, right? Is there's good and bad about everything, but I think when you look at some of these opportunities that kids have and some of their interests and take it seriously, you can actually get to the core of some really interesting concepts. I know people talk about the metaverse, right? And it's mostly kind of a joke to figure out, like, is this thing actually going to make it? But kids all the time are in metaverses, if it's things like Roblox or Minecraft.
And then the new one I keep hearing about, the new Harry Potter is a wide open world game now that's coming out. Everybody's super stoked. They're going to be out there in droves. That's more than the metaverse, a story that they can be familiar with and go act out those roles in there. Everybody's jumping on.
Exactly. So, I mean, again, I don't think it's necessarily at a point where we would be sitting in this meeting and have a little avatar to talking to each other. But I think that idea of people connecting and creating together online, that is really, really powerful. So again, not saying it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. I think being outside matters, but taking it seriously lets you engage with it in a way that kind of gets to those core pieces better.
Right. And, there's always there's still a lot of folks that don't want their kids really engaging in the technology because of, trying to control it, as we talked about earlier, becomes sort of a challenge. Some admission tests, Kamehameha School, one guy I know, he was a little bit concerned, like, okay, Kamehameha School, and they have to do for fourth grade or something like that, they had to do tablet-based test, which they didn't introduce their kids to any of that. So is there a disadvantage, advantage? So I don't think there's really any way we can avoid it. It's almost like another language. It's like the second language, like everyone used to learn Spanish and the other one. But I think digital, communication is like a requirement now.
I mean, I think it's always the same stuff, right? It just kind of looks a little different to me as, the dad of a kid who's 2 years old now. I think it's, moderation is kind of the way that we've always talked about it, but I really think about it as balance. So make sure they're having a little bit of everything and you'll be okay. I think the danger with social media and a lot of these digital technologies is they're designed algorithmically to be addictive and really, really hard for folks to break that. So you'll see that, right? Where it's hard for kids to be away from their phone for too long. And it's almost like that little like phantom limb twitching. I know I feel that sometimes when I have to go on a plane or, there's certain things where I don't have my phone on me and it feels like something is missing. And so that I think we have to be careful of. But again, it's really powerful and really helpful in small doses. We're trying to teach my son Mandarin, and having access to all these, Mandarin videos and songs and kids videos, like it's great, right? And he's learning something valuable that, we can't necessarily provide to him ourselves. And, we don't have to send him to a school to do it.
Right. And we used to have to answer questions by thinking about it and wondering if we read that somewhere in a book or who could we ask. But everyone's straight to their phone, boom, 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 boom. And then they give all the stats and everything about it. It's like, what do we not know anymore? It's like
it's removed a little of the mystery of life, but that's it is what it is.
Right. And I think folks that grow up with it just use it in a normal course of their day. Like we, learn language we don't teach cursive anymore to kids in school. So, things change and we adapt. Humans are great that way, but there is some of that danger where there's that addictive quality, like you say, video games, but also, on the phone, just that scroll, or and I think we've all got caught up in it once or twice, hour at a time, just gone, but it's about monitoring for sure. Now, did you have technology when you were growing up?
No, I'm kind of more in that older millennial space. So we had our kind of Nokia brick phone and big old kind of home Dell computer that takes half a room.
Is a 0.75 gig 0.75 gig
right,
memory.
Yeah. So pretty primitive. So I think maybe that's why that sense of balance is a little bit clearer for me. And honestly, I think on a personal level, I've been trying to scale back more my social media use and just kind of, especially after going through the pandemic, it's easy to feel stressed out by looking at that stuff. And it's good to ask yourself questions like, is this program, is this device, is this time I'm spending, does it make me feel better or worse? Right. And at the end of the day, if you're honest with yourself, I think that's what matters.
Right. Now you plan to have a family, and what, some people talk about, having just limitations where they have a certain amount of time each day, or they have, they have certain, but then the parents have to be as smart as the kids. Usually they're smart. The kids are a little faster on them with the digital. So how to put a block on, and those guys know how to get right around it and some different things. So anyway, it is an interesting dichotomy between this older generation trying to like understand it, and these guys already sort of growing up with it. But what are the impacts if you don't grow up with it and then you miss out at school? Can you tell us, basically everyone gets a laptop now, I think, checked out to them, but if they can't use it at home, very difficult.
Yeah. I think for me, when I try to project what my son will experience as he goes through school, I really want him to understand kind of all the different aspects for using technology. So, if he's going to be thinking about, if he's interested in games, right? What's the creativity behind game design, and how can he, practice his literacy skills by writing out scripts and stories and thinking about, these big thematic elements that are always taught in English class. I mean, I was an English teacher in middle school, right? And it's kind of, you have your plot points, and I think when you think about the medium of technology, it's the same concepts. It's just a different
Right.
way to be able to deliver that. So for me, I think that's something I'll be watching closely, but also looking for opportunities for him to really see this wider world of learning. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that at Hawaiikidscan we're really invested in over not just the next 12 years, but the long haul, which is this
Mm-hmm.
idea that for for a long time, school and education were thought of as the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go to school to learn. Your education happens inside of a school building. And I think what technology offers to me is really something that always existed, which is learning can really be accessed anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
so from not just for my son, but as an organization, I really feel like it's important to promote this idea that kids can learn just as well and just as importantly at a place like a Lo'i or a fish pond as they can in a digital metaverse, as they can in a physical library. And
Right.
so I think trying to think more about the community as a classroom and our community partners and leaders as teachers, I think that's something that honestly, if I projected one big shift over the next 30 years in education, that
Mm-hmm.
would definitely be it.
So sort of a connectivity with purpose and meaning, as those connections aren't just don't happen by happenstance, or the learning. Well, you see it already with AI, as you have some sort of interest in something, and all of a sudden you see more articles about that, or you watch this one video and then you start seeing more videos about that. So there really can tailor as also speed up and slow down the learning based upon what kind of feedback that the student gives to the computer. So there's lots of different things being designed in order to help and create that wraparound for them, so that they can interact, but then also have space and time. Again, look at these beautiful. This is Maui. We don't have a picture yet of the volcano erupting in the background, but there's a lot to learn outdoors and maintaining that balance. But understanding the digital, what I've been able to do is also share the things that you learn here in Hawaii, which is not always people don't know that much about.
Exactly. And I think for our kids who sometimes feel disconnected from the larger world, having an opportunity to, let's say if they want to take a film class that's based out of a school in Brooklyn,
Mhm.
right? How do we make that possible so that it's smooth and it's streamlined? And really learning is not contained to any one particular place. I think that's in some ways it's a very futuristic way of thinking about education, but it's also very old school, which is, you learn from kapuna and mentors in your community, and you get out and you learn by doing, right?
Right.
Like if you want to learn a job skill, you go and try to find an opportunity in the industry to learn. You don't
Right.
necessarily have to read it from a book. And so I think for me, flexibility in education and the opportunity that kids could be able to piece together a more customized experience in school, that's super interesting. I mean, if you think about the cable package versus, what people have pieced together ever since they started cord cutting, the cable packages, you just get whatever's in that package. You get lots of stuff, but it's not necessarily things that you want.
Mhm.
And so in education, right, if you're saying, I don't necessarily feel like I want to spend my time doing X, Y, and Z, but I can find really cool things that are either in the community around me or maybe accessible digitally from
Right.
anywhere in the world. How do I piece that together and make an educational experience that is one-to-one, right? That is
Yeah.
my educational experience,
Uh-huh.
my kind of set of courses and kind of experiential learning opportunities that
Mhm.
is unique to me as David, right? I think
Yeah.
that is really interesting, and I swear it feels sometimes a little crazy to talk about it, but I think I see the pieces coming together so that 20 to 30 years from now, we'll see lots of kids with these really customized learning schedules.
Well, now you'll have to get rid of the cable companies first, right?
Hey, the cable companies are powerful. It's they're still hanging on, but
Because that's
this idea.
a lot of it is resources, and I think that's what charter schools were trying to answer in a lot of ways, by trying to package things that are not just a set stamp state student, you graduate, but hey, these guys want experiential learning in this area. They have an aptitude in this area, which again, we have to adjust for aptitude and desire. The reality of expecting everyone to be a 4-year degree grad. Where's all the tradesmen and then the different other resources that are out there? So there's some question about, approach. And then when that happens, then you also hey, I need money to support my approach or to look at it this way. So, how do you advocate for a pathway that looks like what you're trying to create? Where basically maybe I've got X amount of dollars. My student has $10,000 a year to go and get, have a certain amount of courses. They have to show that they're, working and doing it, blah, 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 that they could use those resources for them.
I think there's a lot of different approaches. And again, I think I would be surprised if a couple of decades from now, this isn't much more mainstream, but you're seeing it already, I think in states like New Hampshire, where community programs, if you think about, YMCA or Kupu, those kinds of community nonprofits can actually apply through the State Board of Education to be able to offer real school credits through their program. So if you're going to do say marine biology course through a nonprofit, you can then get that course credit covered at your home school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just kind of a fun, this is a fun after school experience, but this is a core piece of your learning, right? And you don't have to duplicate that by having to sit in a class and kind of learn the textbook style.
Right.
So that's one option. Another is, what you said, kind of maybe direct funding to parents, where we even had a bill this last legislative session that made it pretty far, that would have enabled families to use, let's say $1,000 in credits to be able to go and get additional help from tutoring or other kind of nonprofit services. So that's one option, is making it easier for folks to access resources in the community. And then the third is really just trying to figure out, maybe it's a partnership with the school that then is able to offer credits to kids who are doing all these different things. So I don't want to jump the gun with one of our potential partnerships, but we have been talking really closely with one of our local private schools about maybe creating a course this summer where it's a way to test out, if you're a kid doing an internship, it doesn't matter what school you're based at. You could be Campbell High School, could be Punahou, could be whatever.
Anywhere.
You're able to get credit, academic credit, through this course we're creating. And it's something that will help you process and get more meaning and quality experiences out of your internship or your service learning experience or your volunteer time. But really anything that happens outside of the four walls of the classroom, helping kids kind of process that. I think that's a really interesting opportunity we could see more of.
Well, yeah, if it was true for my experience too, you found out who your mentor was, and then you put your project together and showed it to him at the end of it. Hey, is this okay? But it's not guided through, a guided process. Right.
And that's what teachers do best, right? Like, as a former teacher, I was responsible for the content, which is the English side. I was responsible for the kind of the differentiation and the support for students with disabilities. That was my special education training. Mm-hmm. But above all, it's that the training in pedagogy and, building relationships, supporting kids, nurturing them. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of stuff that, again, you oftentimes need a qualified teacher to deliver, right? And if you're, let's say you're running a hospital system and you've got these great high school interns, do you feel supported as an employer to be able to make sure that they're getting a quality experience, and you're not just like, go clean that closet over there and then let me know when you're
come
done,
back and see me. Yeah, it is difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah, from an operational perspective, to manage volunteers and interns, it's like almost a full-time person. And
it really is.
Yeah, they're free support, but you don't really have the resources to manage all of them.
And the thing that really stuck with me is, hearing from community members who say, "Oh, I was really interested in this field. I did an internship, and I was just, sweeping the floors all day and grabbing coffee, and it really didn't help me learn any of the actual skills that I was looking for." And mm-hmm. There's some philosophy that says, well, people got to pay their dues, and at least you're around, you're able to build those relationships. I think that I could see that, but I think it's also not the best use of time, where maybe there's some of that, but they're also able to intentionally learn certain skills in a progression that helps them come out of that experience with, kind of real expertise or starting to build their expertise. I think that's what you see in, other countries, in places like Europe, where, if you're going to start an apprenticeship program when you're a sophomore in high school, industry is more than happy to give you a job when you're done with high school, because you've been spending the last 2 to 3 years with them learning the exact things that they need you to learn. So
Right.
it's not there's no mystery, right, over, are the things I'm doing in high school aligned with what I'll be doing with my passion? It's
Uh-huh.
all connected. And I think
Right.
that's where we're still a bit of a work in progress, not just in Hawaii, but in the United States in general. But I think we're getting there. I think there's a lot of interest in that.
Yeah, because we start these pathways early if we want to fill them. I mean, I know in some states, again, you talked about healthcare, we hire CNAs and they'll start them they'll do it through a high school class, let them get credit. And then over there, I think here it's 18, but there they can start working as soon as 16 and they're working. They've got 2 years experience by the time they graduate high school. Similarly, they have like a cosmetology option for some folks that the high school pays for if they choose that option. There's different sort of trade routes, and they've reduced sort of the trade courses and availability in some of the high schools. So then they get out, they've got to go kind of struggle in an internship somewhere but again, the more in the schools, the sooner they can kind of click, oh, hey, this works for me. This fits me. If that's a buffet available to them when they're younger, then they won't have to struggle after high school. Now, what do I do?
Yeah. And I'm really interested in policy that looks at how do we engage and support more of our small to medium sized employers. I think if your hospital system, you may more likely than not have the capacity somewhere in house to be able to support an internship program or something like that. But
yes,
if you're
hospitals.
a small business,
Yeah.
right, if you're a boutique communication shop or something like that, you may have all the heart in the world to offer a program, but not necessarily able to carve out that staff time to make sure that those young people are getting the support they deserve if they're doing that program. So I know other states use tax credits or workers comp credits and other kind of like policy carrots to make it more appealing and make it a better return on investment for the employers to be able to carve out that valuable staff time to be able to really support the kids in a meaningful way.
Well, and they're incentivized to do it too.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's also there's a big component of it, which is recruiting. Even trying to find interns is a challenging piece, and competing for those folks and volunteers. So having being in their companies would be really helpful for them if they're on the front end of these developments,
Exactly. And whether or not employers then want to use some of those funds, those incentives to compensate their own staff for that time, or compensate the interns for their time with the company. I think either of those are great options. I don't remember if we talked about it before, but there's been a big push around, just kind of universal payment of interns. And I know it's controversial because some employers will say, well, then you're just going to kill our internship program because we won't be able to afford to offer anything. But for a lot of the kids who would benefit the most from those experiences, they often have to look at, do I take this internship experience that's unpaid, but it's in the field that I love or that I really want to do, or do I have to actually earn money to be able to pay for my gas and help my family? So I'm going to just kind of do whatever I can to earn money. And even if it's not in the field that I'm interested in, I think that's where, trying to connect those dots so that the kid is able to do the thing that they want in the field where they have those skills and the passion, and money isn't as much of a factor. I think that's really important to look at.
Well, they say it's nearly $10,000, particularly in Hawaii, to transition an employee with training and all of those kind of things. The value of having someone who's going to be a loyal, trusted, partner with you by investing them in them when they're young. Then you don't have to, you already know them. And by the time they're full functioning employees, 18 years old, then you've got loyalty, you've got, the commitment, the knowledge of the job and your systems. So it is a small investment for, well, it's not a small investment. I'll just say that you have to consider that as an investment on that side of it.
And that's part of the learning process for kids, right? I think school I mean, everybody knows about the famous group projects, but by and large, school is still a very much independent endeavor. And if I drop a ball, I'm mostly hurting myself. And work is not like that for the most part. It's all about, everybody playing their collective part of this broader mission. And I'm accountable not just to me, but to we, right? So if I drop a
Right.
ball, if I show up late, if I'm not doing my part, then it has a negative impact on everybody, including the customers or whoever you're trying to serve, right? And so I think having interns compensated helps build out accountability as well, that, hey, this is a serious an endeavor, and you need to understand the value of showing up on time and being
Right.
professional and all of those things that employers say that they value just as much as kind of the technical skills.
And like, as you're bringing anybody on too, if you have a little bit of a sifting process where you call, you still want to evaluate them. They have to go through the process of interviewing and all those different types of things, meeting expectations. And then that gets back down to the rest of the team. If this is a consistent thing, other folks come up, hey, there was a great internship, but boy, are they strict. They really have. So yeah, who's ready for that? But then that message gets out in the younger generation stuff. Oh, they got a job already. They're already working. And oh, okay. So, but it seems like there's not that talk until like they're the halfway through their senior year.
And I think that's something that we can learn from some of these apprenticeship programs with the trades, where there is an expectation. If this is going to be, a construction site or something like that, you've got to show up on time. And if you don't enough times, you're done.
Right. You no longer you have to go find another place to go pursue this trade. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because you're letting us down if you're not showing up, and we're investing in you. And so, school is unique in the sense that it doesn't necessarily have that mechanism because, it is compulsory education, right? And so if the kid is absent, you kind of limits what you can do. So you don't have that same sense of accountability that you might in a job site. And so again, in terms of the skills that we're providing our kids with before they graduate, right? That's where you already see that misalignment start to grow.
Well, David, I don't know where you guys get together and learn all this stuff about all this education and stuff. Is there, I mean, of course you're not for profit, but are there other groups like you that, that have this, that share this vision with you?
I mean, I think one of the things that we really try to do is just stay connected with all kinds of members of the community. So, you'll find us at schools, talking to classes, meeting with parents. That's a big part of what we do, is trying to support parents to understand just the education system. It's unfortunately, education is one of the fields that's most addicted to acronyms. And so a lot of times parents need the system to slow down and help explain, what do these test scores mean, or what are these different requirements, right? How do I know my kid is on track academically and they're at the grade level they should be? All of those kinds of extra layers, I think that's where we find a lot of energy to really help those parents answer those questions for themselves. Then we talk to employers as well, because ultimately, we are K-12 nonprofit, but in order for us to be successful, we need to know that the kids are on the right track and the right path. And so it's taking a step back and saying, for some of these honestly really directionless kids, what kind of support are they getting so that when they enter their post high school life, that they have a sense of purpose and a sense of direction that'll enable them to be financially stable and contributing members to society and happy, right? I think that's something that we're looking at as one of our projects this year, is around higher education and the growing gender gap with boys. There's been a lot written about it, a lot studied, but it's interesting because you'll read the studies, but then I'll actually go out and talk to classes, and you can see it in those classes that a lot of the girls see college and higher education as a default. And a lot of these boys, I hate to say it, are directionless and feel like they couldn't tell you if you offered them $1,000, like, what do I want to do with my life?
Uh-huh.
And, I think there's all kinds of brain research that shows boys just do mature a little bit later. And so I think trying to be intentional about supporting these boys, especially our Indigenous and boys of color, I think that is really tough challenge, but it's one that folks are looking at nationally right now.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, we've have, again, I don't know all the statistics, but I have heard that, there's and that's not a good recipe. Directionless young men become potentially a risk to society. There's some challenges there. So again, finding them their role. What does that look like for them?
And I think part of it too, we have this 5-year project. It's looking at sticky questions like that and the value of college and the cost of college and how do we talk about higher education? Because I think rightfully there's been a realization about the impact of student loan debt, and it's made it all the way up to the White House and all these, it's kind of at the highest level of national conversation, and that's true. But there are a lot of great cost-effective options that kids maybe aren't thinking about. And if they have the right guidance and support to look down the road and say, okay, so if college or higher education is a means to an end, and here's where I want to go, that's a completely different proposition than just kind of going to a 4-year college because you feel like that's what you're supposed to do. And then
or your friends go or whatever. Yeah.
Or your friends go, right? And it becomes the world's most expensive career explorer. I think what we're trying to really focus on is if those kids need an extra year or the gap year or whatever kind of support that they should be getting in school, and then they go on to higher education and they understand, okay, there's a financial literacy component of this too that matters, which is I can project ahead and say, these are the things that I want out of my life by the time I'm, let's say, 30. In order to get there, this is the kind of income I need. In order to get that kind of income I need, here are the kinds of credentials and skills that I need, right? And then be able to backwards plan it so that
pull it together. Why am I doing this, all this stuff? Right.
Exactly. And so then when they go to college or they go get a degree, they're boosted by having that purpose and a clarity of what it's all for, right? And I think that is the biggest shift that has to happen, which is we need to be much more thoughtful and intentional about, when kids are looking at higher education or the value of higher education, can they start to make those broader kind of pathways through their life?
Well, I think, again, after this pandemic, after all of this, I think it's, what you are doing, David, is exactly what we need here in Hawaii. And I'm glad we had a chance a second time to bring you on. I'm sure we could go on for like hours because I'm very interested in this as well. But we really appreciate you coming on again. And we wish you the best. But before you go, you've got to have some downtime. Now, have you picked up any new hobbies since our last meet?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think what I said last time is we're in the midst of trying to survive with what was a 1.5-year-old, basically.
Right.
And that sadness has not changed much.
Terrible twos.
Yeah, it's real. I am excited though that, I think the world has reopened quite a bit since we last talked. I've got some good friends that like to meet up with, go happy hour, go to the movies, play basketball. And so it's great to have that part of life back, and not kind of feel worried about it. And I do have more travel for work, but also build in kind of the fun side too. So if I don't have to go I had a conference this fall in New York City, which was awesome. I got to visit something called the Brooklyn Steam Center that everybody should Google immediately because it's really, really inspiring. But I also got to carve out a little bit of time at the end of that conference to catch up with family out in the New York area. So, I always love just being able to explore and get to meet up with all kinds of people.
That's so cool. It's tough for Hawaii folks to get and travel. And so making meaningful jaunts over to the mainland is a hobby in and of itself because it takes a lot of planning and especially with your traveling too. And hey, they'll get older and then they become teenagers, and then you'll think, oh, 2 was easy.
It's simpler problems, right? It's not
Just
so
different, yeah.
existential. It's like, can you just please eat your food and not be picky? Oh, I guess that
Right.
probably doesn't change either.
Well, it varies, but it's a wonderful thing you're
Yeah.
doing, and I think creating a pathway for your child, and for again, for Hawaii's children is admirable, and we look forward to seeing all the great things that you and Hawaii Kids can put together in 2023 and beyond. Anything else you'd like to tell the Hawaii Boss folks?
No, just appreciate the opportunity, to come on and have these conversations, and you've offered such a great forum for a whole range of different individuals, including our incoming governor, which is a pretty incredible.
That was cool. I got to meet him. That was
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I have to agree with that. I'm geeking out about that myself.
That's pretty wild.
So anyway, thank you, David. And again, best of luck. God bless. And until next time, hui hou.
Thanks, David.
Make sure to subscribe to Hawaii Boss and follow us on social media at Hawaii Boss Podcast at the links in the description. We'll see you soon in the boss's office.